Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for our Think Tank Tuesday. I am Nichelle Toussaint, the president of Foothill Alumni Chapter, and we want to say thank you for taking the time out to join us tonight for tonight's Think Tank Tuesday featuring Lisa McNair. Foothill Alumni has served the Foothill community since 1991. It is a joy for us to connect with you during this virtual time. And I'm going to turn you right over to our social action chair, Sora Alexis Marion, so we can get tonight started. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sora Nichelle. Welcome again to everyone. The Social Action Committee and our chapter is so happy that you were able to join us this evening. Just a few reminders before we get started. We're in webinar format, so all participants are muted and off camera. So if you have your scarf on or you're eating a snack, it's totally fine. We cannot see you. Please make sure you place any technical or content questions in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function. They are being monitored so that we can make sure to ask questions of Lisa as we are going along in the presentation. So feel free to put your questions in there. And then a last reminder is to please stay until the end of the evening, because we will ask you to complete your evaluations, and your completed evaluation is your entry into our little gift card raffle, which we'll have 5 winners for. So please do stay until the end, because that's, aside from the presentation, that is also the fun part of this evening. So thank you. And let's go ahead and get started. Uh-oh, my computer is, there we go. So just a quick few notes about our speaker tonight. We are so happy to have her. Lisa McNair is the oldest living daughter of Maxine and the late Chris McNair. And you may have heard her name before, or her family's name before, because her sister, Denise McNair, was one of the 4 little girls who was killed in the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. So an event in history that you may have learned about in your history classes, or you may have seen a documentary or a movie about at some point. And today we get to enjoy a living history lesson from Lisa McNair, and she's going to talk to us about the lessons learned from the civil rights movement and how her family has really worked towards reconciliation, even with the tragic death of her sister. We want to make sure that you go to Lisa's website if you want to have her come speak to a group of yours. She is amazing, as you will see, so please do reach out to her through her website, speaklisa.com. And I am just going to stop here because Lisa really can talk to the details, and that is enough of an introduction. So Lisa, I am going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours, and we will get it going. There we go. And you should be able to share your screen now and get your presentation up.
Okay.
Great, and we can hear you well.
Good. And thank you, Alexis, and everybody. Appreciate y'all so much for having me. And I look forward to answering any questions anybody has and sharing with y'all today. So I'm going to just start by telling you a little bit about my family, because some people have heard about the bombing and some people may not have heard about the bombing. And so I just want to share a little bit about it and a little bit about my family and kind of what we've been through, but as I talk also about how life has changed over time. As they mentioned, my sister Denise was one of the 4 girls killed in the 1963 church bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. The other girls were Addie Mae Collins, who was 14, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Morris Wesley. Those girls were also killed on that day, and they were 14, just beginning their freshman year in high school. Denise was 11, the youngest of the 4 girls at that time. She also was the only child of my parents at that time. Many people don't know that, and that my mother struggled with carrying a baby to term. So she wasn't the only child by choice. That was not the intention, but they'd not been able to carry a child to term. So you can imagine what a sad thing that must have been to lose her, period, but then to possibly not ever have any more children. But God is good and He is faithful. And almost a year to the day that she was killed, I was born. And then 4 years after that, my younger sister, Kimberly, was born. Kim is a professional chef here in the area and a nutritional health coach. And she has some of the best vegan food you ever want to taste. So it's really good. This is a image of the church on that day. Right here where this big opening is the wall that was blown out. On the other side of this wall was a staircase. At the bottom of the staircase was where the bomb was planted. But on this side of the wall, it was a wall and there was a window above it. And then below the window, there was a couch, and the girls were standing by the couch when the impact happened. You can see this crater right in front of it of what tremendous damage it did. And if you look in the background, all the windows in the back of the building behind the church. The picture over here to your right is a picture you've probably seen if you've heard much or seen file footage. You see people who are sad, but I see family. This lady on the left is my grandmother, my mother's mother. This little girl is my cousin Lynn. This is my aunt, my mother's sister, and that is my mother. I don't know who the gentleman is with the hat, but my auntie and my cousin didn't go to church that day because my auntie had recently had a new baby and he wasn't feeling well. But my cousin Lynn and my sister Denise were first cousins, just a couple of years apart. They went everywhere together and did everything together. So if Nedrick hadn't been sick that day, we probably would have lost 2 children in our family on that day. Sarah Collins Rudolph was the 5th girl in the bathroom. Her sister was Addie Mae Collins, and she was just far enough away from them. She'd come from the sink in the stalls, and she hadn't made it to where they were, which allowed her to not get killed in that bombing that day. Many people don't know about Sarah, but she was the sole survivor of that event in that ladies' lounge that day. She did lose an eye and suffered several other injuries, but she lives today, and she just had her biography to come out called The 5th Girl. So you can check that out, and it should be a really good book. This is some images of the funeral of the 3 girls. Mrs. Robinson had planned her daughter Carol's funeral that later that afternoon after the bombing. So when Dr. King came to meet the parents on that Monday after the bombing, she'd already made up her mind and she wasn't willing to change it. And I can imagine that would be tough to have to start over and plan another funeral. So they had their funeral, Carol's on a different day. But Cynthia Wesley and Addie Mae Collins and Denise were all buried at 6th Avenue Baptist Church on the same day. So you can see my mom and my dad coming down the steps here. And then this is an image of my mom where she just passed out from the just being too much to deal with that day. My mom is the only person living now, only parent of the 4 girls who are living. We lost my daddy a little bit over a year ago this past May, and my mother still lives here in our home that I grew up in, and she is 92. She has Alzheimer's, and she is now legally blind, but she is one of the sweetest Alzheimer's patients you ever want to meet. She laughs a lot and smiles, and her favorite thing to do is eat all day, every day. Like eating is like everything. She'll wake up in the middle of the night. What's for breakfast? Like nothing. It's 2:30. We're going back to sleep. We're not eating. And so she wants some gum or barbecue sandwich. Those are her things. But she's delightful, and we're just blessed to still have her here. I think that they're some of the best parents anyone could ever have. They taught us a lot of things. They opened the world up to us. When the world opened up after segregation, they opened it up to us and allowed us to experience so many things. But also, they did not allow us to hate. That was not on the table for the McNair household. Um, white people, we didn't hate white people. They taught us to love each person individually. What people don't know is my dad did not go to 16th Street. He went to a small Lutheran church that was maybe maybe 300 members, all African American, except for 5 people: the pastor, his wife, and their 3 kids. They were white. Pastor Elwanger was very active in the movement, and even today, in his 80s, he is still active in the movement and the fight for justice and freedom in this country. And they were at our house, and we were at their house all the time, which was a rare thing in the 60s. But that gave us the wonderful opportunity not to see all white people as evil, but know that some of them were good. My father believed that the real way to honor Denise was to go into public service, to fight within the system that had oppressed us and not been fair. But he did that. So in 1973, 10 years after the bombing, he was elected as the first African American to serve in the state legislature from Jefferson County, the county we lived in. And this is a picture of us at the swearing in that day, and me and Kim and Daddy and Mama killing it with those glasses. Uh, she's always sharp, always been sharp woman. As far as people convicted of the bombing, there were originally 4 people identified as having committed the murders. However, nobody was arrested or brought to justice until 1977, when this man, Bill Baxley, who was the attorney general at the time, brought Robert Dynamite Bob Chambliss to trial on the murder of just Denise, not the other girls, because he was afraid that if he was not to get the conviction, double jeopardy would attach, and no one would ever be, he would never be brought to justice for having killed the girls. But he was convicted and served a life sentence and died in prison. And sometime shortly after he entered prison, he wrote Daddy like a 7 or 8 page handwritten letter talking about how he didn't do it and wanted to know if Daddy could help him get out. Anyway, next slide. So in 1997, Spike Lee did the documentary The Four Little Girls, which is fabulous. And if you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you watch it. It is an excellent documentary about the lives of each of the girls, their family, and what Birmingham was like at that time, what life was like at that time. It seems so long ago, but it really, really wasn't. And they are now streaming it on Amazon, Netflix, and HBO Max for free. So I highly recommend, if you've not seen it, please watch it, and watch it with your children and your family. I think during that time, this was 1997, so still, but Dynamite Bob was the only one brought to justice. The other 3 guys had still never been brought to justice. And people kept asking, well, what about the other people? Well, what about the other people? What about other people? So I think the movie also helped help to bring the other people to justice because of being embarrassed. I think the powers that be were like, well, I guess we do need to do something about that. So that brought Doug Jones, who was the U.S. attorney at the time, to bring the last 2 killers that were still alive to justice, Thomas Blanton and Bobby Frank Cherry in 2001 and 2002, respectively. And, Doug Jones is a great friend of ours. Sadly, he just lost opportunity. He just lost the race for U.S. Senate, but, don't sell him out. He'll be back doing something else. You just watch. Um, in 2013, which was the 50th anniversary of the bombing, the girls were posthumously given the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the largest honor that a civilian can receive from Congress. And both houses of Congress had to vote on it, and they voted unanimous. What I also think was cool was Terry Sewell, our Democratic African American Congresswoman, and Spencer Backus, one of the 6 a Republican white congressman from the state of Alabama, wrote the bill together so that the girls could receive this honor. And you know, as you learn from the cartoon that you see on Saturday, I'm just a bill. Once the bill has been voted on, it has to be signed by the president. So we got the wonderful opportunity to go to the White House and meet President Obama and me and Mama and see him sign the bill. And it was a wonderful opportunity. Doug was there, the current minister of 16th Street. This is Carol Robertson's sister, our Terry Sewell, our congresswoman. This was, oh shoot, can't remember his name. Uh, Holder and his wife. And this was the current mayor, and then the attorney, the surgeon general at the time, who was from Alabama. And they were all in attendance. And it was a great day, a great experience. And for the longest, Mama did remember. She couldn't remember what day it was or what she had to eat 5 minutes ago, but she remembered that Obama kissed her on the cheek. I've been told that Denise was a really wonderful person, that she was a very precocious child, but she cared about her friends. She cared about people, and people really meant a lot to her, and she wanted to help. So this is a picture of her and one of our neighbors and our cousin Lynn throwing a muscular dystrophy fair in our front yard to raise money for muscular dystrophy. Well, what little kid does that? So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'll just say give you a few thoughts, and then I'll open the floor for questions and answers because I love the Q&A, and I love to hear what people want to ask me, and it just always opens up such great dialogue. Um, we're in a great place in our life now. It doesn't seem like it, but I think some of the homework from the 60s after Dr. King was killed didn't quite get finished. And I think George Floyd and all the other murders of innocent Black people this year have opened up the window for people to really start asking questions. Start the dialogue over again about race in this country and what the issues we've not dealt with, things we've not solved, the fact that most of the stories like Denise's, the Four Little Girls, Little Rock Nine, the Damer story are not in the history books. You hear about the March on Washington, you know about Rosa Parks, but do people know about Emmett Till? Do they know about Medgar Evers? These things are just not mentioned. And we need to start a mission to share and tell these stories because they're important. They're stories about brave people who fought not with fists or guns, but non-violently for rights that each of us should have as an American citizen in this country. And I think we also need to look back and understand and know these people, and knowing their history, knowing their story humanizes us and helps us to know that we were real people. Black people are real people, just like everybody else. One of my favorite movies is A Time to Kill because in the summation part, if you haven't seen it, the lawyer talks about that gets Samuel L. Jackson off. What he does to win his case is helps the all-white jury understand that he's a human being. It humanizes him. And Daddy used to always say that he would never say, well, white people do this and Black people do this. He would say human beings do this because we're all human beings in this world. And we really need to remember that and look at each other like that when we make decisions, when we say words we shouldn't say, when we do ugly things that we shouldn't do. We have to remember that about ourselves. My dad also went on after he served several terms in the legislature to be a county commissioner. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And part of what he would do was he was over the environmental services. And environmental services were a number of things, but one of them was he was over the plumbers for the county and over the head plumber. And so the head plumber was a good old boy. He was a white guy, and his name was Dennis. And Dennis was a nice guy. He was funny. He used to crack jokes. And I got to know him well because my dad was born in a small town in Arkansas. and evidently had an outhouse, and it must have left an effect because when he remodeled the house, we now have 6 bathrooms in this house. So there's no line, no waiting at all, but there's always a plumbing issue. So he paid Dennis to come and help fix the toilets, sinks, showers. And while he was there, I was always fascinated with plumbing. I still want to sign up for a junior college and learn plumbing. I'm gonna do it before I die, I swear. And I would follow him around, and he would show me what he did, and we'd laugh and talk. And he'd always tease me because my sister Kim went to Auburn, and he was a huge Auburn fan, and I went to Alabama. And he said, "Well, I like you well enough, but I really like Kim better because she knows what school to go to." And so I sat down, and we would sit down and chat after whatever he was fixing was fixed. And this one time, Dennis said that he really loved my dad. He really loved Dad. He'd grown to love him. He was a great person, and so glad he had him in his life. But he said that he used to hate Black people. He couldn't stand them. Said that when Birmingham was integrated and Birmingham got its first mayor, he and his wife sold their house and moved to the country to live in a trailer park just so they wouldn't have to live next to Black people. And that was kind of painful and hard to hear. But he said that he met Daddy, and he had to change the way he thought about Black people. Daddy was just so nice, and he was so real that he just, you know, attached himself to him, and, became his friend for life. And he became my friend for life. And I think what did that was the humanity that we all have. We've got to look at each other as humans. But what's even better is Dennis shared that with his family, his wife, his kids, even his son-in-law, who we are still friends with to this day. They turned their thought process around, and that's really what it's all about. Dennis died a few years ago, and I miss him terribly, but I'll never forget that he took the time to change the bad thoughts that he had in his head for good. So that's it for
That
now.
seems like
And
perfect timing to take questions. That was exactly perfect. So
okay.
thank you so much for sharing what you shared. I mean, I just took so many notes because there's just so many gems. And we have several questions. So we'll get into those questions. I just want to remind everyone, please place your questions in the chat or use the Q&A function. We're going to go through these questions. And also, please be reminded to stay until the end so that you can complete your evaluation as well. So thank you for that. So you sort of touched on it. First of all, having 6 bathrooms, that like really speaks to some deep, like, we are not going in an outhouse ever again. And I, for one, am here for it. That sounds good. But to be more serious, so today, most of you may not know this, but today is Denise's birthday. So it was just sort of fortuitous that we decided to have this conversation this evening. And one of the questions that we had was, what gives you the strength to continue to talk about Denise and your family's story? You know, it is a personal story, but in the same way, as you said about it, you know, not being in history books in the way that it should, it's a personal story, but it's also, you know, a community story, a movement story as well. So how are you able to find the strength and the fortitude to continue to tell this story, especially in the climate that we're in today?
I think it's even more so important that I do it in the climate that it's in today because it needs to be heard, it needs to be shared, it needs to be told. I think it's my lot in life. I think that's what I'm supposed to do is to share. I think when I'm talking to people, if there are people listening to me in any audience that, might be straddling the fence or really needing to hear something that I said, I have to be there to give that. And, sometimes it is hard. Sometimes I get up here and I'm like, oh, I ain't gonna make it through this hour with these people. And I do cry. But, most of the times I'm able to, carry it forth because it is so very important. And I think about people that I've met like Dennis who, made that change in his life, uh, that was just profound, you know. And we need more people to do that. And the only way that can happen is by having the dialogue.
I just realized I was on mute. Thank you. And part of that, so you said you feel like it is your lot in life to make sure the story continues to get out there. And part of a question that was asked was, how do we continue to work on social issues that will keep the history of this event and your family's journey alive, keep that legacy alive? What is it that we can be doing as individuals, as families, community, to make sure that the story spreads further?
Well, I think a wonderful thing that we have is we have the internet. So you can Google civil rights, the civil rights movement, and there's a timeline, or you can Google civil rights death, and there's a list of those. That you can learn the history, but everybody on this call has spent time learning about this today. So you need to go back and tell people who you'll see, and ask them, do they know the story? Have they heard the story? See what they say. Share what you know, share what you've learned, share that these were actual people and human beings who suffered this loss, not just names in a book or people in history, actual human beings. And so I think it's each one of us as a person has the obligation to go back and share what we have learned. Then not only that, if you hear racist things being said or done, and if you laugh or don't say anything, how are you contributing to the problem? I think Dr. King said something to the effect of, it wasn't the people who were the loudest who were, the problem is those that stood and watched and was silent. We've got to be vocal.
Absolutely. And that kind of answers another question that was, asking about the increase in racism and racial tension in our current state here in the United States and across the world. And standing up and saying something is one way to combat that when you see it. Another question that was asked was, one, do y'all still attend the 16th Street Baptist Church? I couldn't find if it was still open. I know that there's a marker there, but I wasn't sure if it was still open.
Yeah, it still is open. It is an active church. They've actually in the last year redid the basement finally. I mean, it'd be done so structurally, but they totally did it like a museum. And so it's great. And it tells a story of the church as well as the bombing. We no longer attend. We left in 1983, and we're all over the place. Now every one of us goes to a different church, so but we're not there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And another question was, what would you say, and I think this sort of pertains to the story that you were telling, what would you say to white people who can't see Black people as human, and therefore are blindly supporting systemic racism and interpersonal racism for that matter? What would you say to those folks, or what advice would you give for us to be using in those conversations?
I go back to what I said. You have to kind of meet them where they live, get to know them as human beings, try to find things in common that you have in common. It's so easy to do such a thing sometimes when we sit down, break bread together, or just spend time together. It's so funny. I travel a lot, and a lot of times I'll go in areas where I know it's like not necessarily racist, but it ain't a whole lot of Black people on there. And like if I'm driving and I stop at a rest stop in like a place, Coleman. Growing up, Mama said Coleman was a place that had a sign when you got to the city limits said Black, they didn't call you Black then. And don't leave Black people. And if you can't read, leave anyway, or something like that. And so every now and then it's like a rest. If I'm going to Huntsville to visit my cousin, it was like the rest stop right at the Coleman line, and I'll see an old white man or a white good dude, and he'll be looking at me cross-eyed, rude. But if he has an Alabama hat on or an Alabama shirt, and I say roll tide, the whole thing is off the table. Hey, roll tide! That game was good last week, and you started. So there are commonalities that we have as human beings, and you have to just try to reach people where you can. Will you reach everybody? No, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
But I think you have to give it a try. You have to give it a shot.
for sure. So another question that we had is, do you know the 1619 project? That's
I
by
am
the New
not
York
familiar with that.
Times. Okay, so it was asking about that, but the broader question is really because so many people's stories are so little known, right? Like we know, as you noted, we know the highlights of the civil rights movement, but not the everyday stories and tragedies really of different families and individuals. Um, what is there anything that you know of that's being done to help illuminate those stories that we can also tack onto or join in the effort with?
Sure. I think locally, over there, that's
Mhm.
Sojourn to the Past,
Right.
where they take students on a 7-day trip to learn about the civil rights movement. I've just joined a board, and we're forming a nonprofit called the Morgan Project, and it's www.morganproject.org. And we're going to be writing a curriculum so that the state of Alabama will include civil rights stories along with the other stories in history to try to change the narrative in history in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
But we're also hopefully, once we get that kicked off, we can take that throughout the country. So that is the organization. And then there are a number of organizations all over the country that do tours and do things like that. And they're wonderful museums. But at the end of the day, the goal is we're going to have to get the school books changed.
Yes.
Somebody's got to start that.
Mhm.
Whether you started in your own state, but I've been told that all the school books in all of the country come out of Texas. So somebody needs to figure out how to start a movement for that,
Absolutely.
because it's nice to take a tour and it's nice to go and visit the museums, but what if you're never able to do that? You
Mhm.
need to learn that in school, just like you learn Washington chopped down a cherry tree, or you need to also know that Vernon Daber in Hattiesburg, Mississippi was killed by the Klan for trying to help people to vote. All that needs to be interwoven in our history, because it is our shared American history.
Right. And I would be remiss as social action chair if I did not point out that one of the ways to make these things happen is to get involved in your local politics, right? We have just had a very big election and it has been tiring for all of us, but the way to make textbook changes happen is to get involved with your local school board, right? It's to get involved in those local community, county areas of politics so that your voices can be heard. And now with the quarantine, most of those meetings are virtual. So you can
Yeah.
pop in and show your face and give your comments as well, which can be really helpful because that's how change happens. Which you're right, Lisa, it's not enough to go visit the museum if everybody doesn't have that accessible to them. So thank you for that
And I'd
point.
like to say two other things.
Mhm.
We elect public officials and we think, yay, we've done a good job, especially if your guy gets in. But we need to keep that up. We hired them, and you need to stay on top of them. If you were a boss, you wouldn't hire somebody and say, go do this and never check up on them. It's our job. They work for us. We have to check up on them. Also, everybody has to be registered to vote, and you need to make sure that you are registered to vote and your children. I've heard so many people my age, I'm 56, say, well, I guess my children are registered to vote. Well, how you don't know that? That you ought to know. If you didn't take them with you when you were voting and the day they turned 18, they weren't at the polls, that's on you. And you need to know that. And you need to make sure that they know that. But also, so many people don't understand the connection of voting and the juries. Jury pools are picked from registered voter rolls. So we can have a voice in what goes on with us, but we've got to be active participants.
Absolutely. And I'm definitely one of those people in the past who extended and pushed so that I would never have to go to jury duty. But I'm actually waiting for the next time they send me my notice, because I will be there. They haven't asked me in a while, but the next time they send me, I will be right there early, okay, ready to serve on the jury. Yeah. So I've learned my lesson.
I hear somebody complaining about jury duty. I was like, oh, you need to go to jury. Let me tell you what. And so I know nobody ever wants to say they don't feel like going jury duty around me. They'll get a lecture. Okay.
That's awesome. So another question I had, and this is one that I was wondering myself, is how has your sister's death and your family's story impacted your own identity? And going along with that question is, do you ever get tired of being the sister of one of the little girls? Is that burden ever too much to bear at times? Or do you want to take that off sometimes and just be Lisa?
No, I don't. It's too important to do. It has been weird though, because people look at you a certain way, or people put you up here on a pedestal, and that's unnecessary. I mean, my family had a tragedy happen to me, and remember her name, remember the cause, but that's no reason to treat me like a delicate flower or a princess or something. That's kind of weird and crazy. So that's the only thing that kind of throw off, that kind of gets on my nerves. But I miss not knowing her. They're just the two of us now, and I love when people I meet tell me a story about her, and it's great. I mean, because you meet somebody, you have relatives who've died, but you can remember what they sound like, what they smell like, what their mannerisms were. I have none of that with her. I cannot connect. Yeah. But I know we'll all meet together again one day in heaven. Absolutely. But no, I'm grateful to be her sister.
That's beautiful. Okay, 2 little questions left. One, do you know if there's a children's book about this event at all?
Oh, there's that one that kids read, the Watkins Go to Birmingham, which I'm real embarrassed to say people have given us copies of it, and I never have read that book. But it talks about, Alabama during that time and everything. So, and I think students in Alabama have to read that book. Every year somebody is teaching a middle school class, we're reading Watkins Go to Birmingham. Did you know about it? I'm like, yeah. And then the organization I was talking about, the Morgan Project, it was named after Charles Morgan, who was a gentleman at the Young Men Business Council, which was a men's group, a business group that met every week for lunch. And the Monday after the bombing, he went to the group and he told them that whose fault was it? Y'all need to Google Charles Morgan. It's really cool. He said he came to, and it was all white group. He told them it's our fault because we've been silent and we've let that happen, and we should have spoken up. Well, subsequently, he was threatened, had his life threatened, his family's life threatened, and he had to move out of Alabama. Wow. But he wrote a book, A Time to Speak, which is out of print, but UA Press is about to put it back in print. And so you might be able to Google it or have it on Amazon. But I imagine that talks a little bit about the bombing and as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Okay.
So right after that, I know that those books.
So those are some good resources. The Watkins Go to Birmingham, look for the Morgan Project, and the book Time to Speak by Charles Morgan, and then also the movie For Little Girls by Spike.
Little Girls documentary by Spike. It's very good.
That's the one that I've seen, is probably like the most common and probably easiest to step into. So we're gonna go to our last question, which is, we want to leave folks with a feeling of action, right? What can they do? So from your perspective, what can we do, if there's one specific action, or however you want to put it, to either, one, help hold our elected officials accountable to the work that we want them to do for our communities, or two, to work to overcome this sort of climate of racism, these social injustices that we are currently experiencing? Is there, when you talk to folks, young people included, is there one thing you tell them they can do? We got to vote and serve on a jury. So I'll let you leave with the last word on what we can do.
Well, definitely all of that. But seriously, right now, read. I have a lot of white friends, and since George Floyd, they've reached out to me. And this is for anybody that's not white as well who might not know. They're like, we never knew this really happened. We didn't really think it all really happened. We're so sorry. How can I do better? How can I learn better? I want to know, what movies should I watch? What documentaries should I watch? What books should I read? So I just gave them a litany of African American books of, authors from the last century. Oh God, what's that movie, documentary that PBS did? Eyes on the Prize.
Yep.
Educate yourself with what's out there, what you don't know, but make sure, that's nice, and you'll sit with that knowledge, you to share that knowledge, speak about it like you all are here at your sorority meeting. Speak about that. Your children, do your children really know what's going on? I mean, you send them in school every day, but what do they know about what they don't know? If you don't know, then they don't know. I think I didn't know as a 30-year-old person when I first went on the sojourn trip and spent 10 days learning about stuff I had never heard of. And it happened to me, and I had a parent who was a teacher. So that was important. So I think we just have to continue the knowledge and the dialogue. When you're having lunch with friends, when you're at work, did you know, last night I met Lisa McNair, whose sister was one of the 4 girls. Did you know about that? I'm learning so much about civil rights. What do you know about civil rights? I mean, you got to have the dialogue and spark the dialogue, because it's like a pebble. You drop a pebble and it, goes far. And so you have to keep that dialogue, because it's the only way we're going to work this through in this country and have love and have peace, because we got to look at each other as human beings. And the only way you can know me and I can know you as a human being is I've got to know about you.
Yes, absolutely. That's so wonderful the way you put that.
Can I do one thing?
For
I
sure.
want to shout out my friend Octavia Porter's on here, and I saw Davine and Heather Fox were on here. I want to say hey to y'all. So
those happen to
anybody else I missed, hey.
Davine and Heather happen to be my mom and my sister. So hey y'all.
I know.
Right? Okay, so I dropped the link to the evaluation in the chat. So please, all of you who are here, click the link, and so you can start filling out that evaluation. If you have any last minute questions, please also place those in the chat while we're filling out evaluations. Lisa, was this was the last slide? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was the last slide.
Okay, great. So you can stop sharing, and then I'll share my screen again. And I'll keep everyone saying it's wonderful. If you want to look in the chat, they're saying it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Happy birthday to Denise. That was put in the Q&A. Cool. And then let me share my screen. Whoopsie. It's so slow. All righty. All right, so everyone, the evaluation link is in the chat, but if you have your smartphone handy, you can take a picture of this QR code and it'll take you straight to the evaluation. Please complete your evaluation so that way that is your entry into the gift card drawing. Make sure your email is correct, because that is how I send you the gift card afterwards. If it's not correct, I cannot send it to you, and I would like you to have it. And I'm checking to make sure, see if there are any other questions. Everyone's saying great presentation, blessings to you and your family. I want to remind everyone that a recording of today's webinar, as well as our previous Think Tank Tuesday webinars, is available on our website. Our website is dstfoothill.org, and you can go to /Think Tank Tuesdays to find all the recordings and associated resources. They are all there. Let's give it a couple more minutes for the evaluations, and then we'll do our little drawing. And as mentioned earlier, the few resources were the Spike Lee movie for the little girls, the Watkins Go to Birmingham. Also, Keep your eyes on the prize. That song gets stuck in my head every time I watch that documentary. It goes stuck forever. So also a great documentary to watch. Lisa also mentioned a nonprofit program called Sojourn to the Past that takes students on a 7-day trip through the South. I went on that trip as well as an adult, actually. It was really informative. I learned so many things that I would not have learned otherwise, including a bunch of music and songs. And that was actually the trip where I met John Lewis. So that was really beautiful, you know, having him pass recently, it was really nice to be able to do that. So that is a really great experience if that's something you're looking into. And let me just double check that there's no
about Sarah Collins' book. I think it's Africa Press.
Okay.
I think you have to go Africa Press. That's how you order it, through
Great.
Africa Press.
And I'll grab the full title just a second. Sorry, Nichelle, are you ready for? Yep, you're ready. Okay, great. For the drawing. And I'll look for the full title while we're doing that.
We are ready to start picking names. Thank you, all of you who have submitted an evaluation. And if you haven't yet, please continue to submit as we get ready to draw some names. So I'm going to spin a wheel on my side. Our first winner is Karen Levin. Karen Levin, and she just dropped a thank you and a super presentation. So congratulations, Karen. That was perfect timing.
You'll be getting a $10 Amazon gift card.
Awesome. Our next winner is Reba Freeman. Reba Freeman.
Reba Freeman. Yay. You will also be getting a $10 Amazon gift card. Oh, thank you, Karen. We appreciate that.
Our next winner is Fawn White. Fawn White.
Fawn White. Thank you so much for attending and completing your evaluation, Fawn.
Our next winner is Carolyn Ray. Carolyn Ray.
Carolyn Ray. Thank you for attending and completing, Carolyn.
And our last winner is Lavana Asbell. Lavana Asbell.
Awesome. Thank you so much for attending. You will all receive $10 Amazon gift cards. And thank you to Karen. I saw your note, so we appreciate that as well. And so let me just advance to the very last slide. All righty, so just a quick note before I turn it back over to Nichelle, just a last thank you so much to Lisa for being here. We appreciate you using this time to let us celebrate Denise's birthday by keeping her memory alive in our community. That's so important. I think that's a really great way to celebrate her life and her legacy. We want to let you all know, our audience, that we will be continuing our Think Tank Tuesdays in 2021. They will be on the 4th Tuesday of the month, starting in February. So that's February 23rd, March 23rd, April 27th, and May 25th. Feel free to email us at our email there if you would like more information, or you have ideas or speakers you think would be great to share with the community. We would love to take your opinions on that as well. And I will turn it over to you, Sora and Nichelle.
Awesome. Thank you, Sora Marion, and thank you, Miss McNair. It was a joy to hear from you this evening. Your storytelling is excellent. I love great storytelling, and we will keep you, your family, in our thoughts, and especially celebrate with you tonight the birthday of your sister. So I agree with everyone in the chat. Happy birthday, Denise. Continue to join us, community and family. We appreciate your time and your efforts. Want to thank all of the members of the Divine Nine who joined us this evening, and just ask that you please save these dates and spread the word as we continue to share in this and make an impact through social action with our community. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.